Welcome to the Word Podcast. I am Rich Abernathy, but unfortunately, I am not joined by my esteemed co-host James Mendia this week. James has been a little under the weather, and he told me if it was a playoff game, he would have been out here giving it a go. But a lot of season left, and the medical staff advised him to sit out, so hopefully James will be back at 100% next week. On our last show, James and I went pretty deep on the protests centered around the racial inequality in this country. We got into some tough topics, but it was an open, honest, and respectful conversation, or at least that was our intention. And if you haven't checked that out or some of our more recent episodes, we would encourage you to do so. As always, you can find this podcast wherever you download your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Spreaker, and we also have a YouTube channel. So any of those places you can check us out and listen to the show. Also, please subscribe, and if you'd be kind enough to leave us a 5-star review and some comments, we would appreciate that as well. And you can also follow us on Twitter via @TheWordPodcast. Now, we had planned to do a slightly different episode for this week anyway, and with James on the sideline, we've got a little bit of a mini-pod with a very special guest. I was fortunate enough to be joined by my friend and former colleague John Swantek, who is one of the announcers for PGA Tour Live. It's a wonderful service if you haven't checked it out. They provide great coverage of PGA Tour events, especially early in the morning before the networks go live. So if you're a golf fan, just trust me, go sign up and you will not be disappointed. Swanee was gracious enough to hop on for about 25 minutes and break down the return of the PGA Tour for this week's Charles Schwab Challenge, being held at the historic Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas. We had a great discussion not only about the return of golf and what the new sports landscape looks like from a TV perspective, but he also nailed some picks for players to be in contention. And then towards the end, we just talked sports in general a little bit, and I guess wanting a hard time for being a Mets and a Knicks fan, which is low-hanging fruit, I'll admit, but as a frustrated Braves and Hornets fan myself, it's nice to know I'm not the only one stuck in an eternal state of disappointment with my team. So stay tuned for our interview with John Swantek right after this. All right, joining us on the show this week, an old friend of the program from PGA Tour Live, John Swantek. Swanee, how you doing? Thanks for coming on the show this week.
Richie, it's been a while. It's been far too long. What's happening? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Golf is back.
Golf is back, which is wonderful on so many levels. There's only so many home projects I can tackle here at the house, and there's only so many episodes of Better Call Saul or the Great British Baking Show that I can watch. So yeah, golf's in a unique position to kind of be, back in the game here this week with the Charles Schwab Challenge in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah, what's the atmosphere? What's the excitement level there at the tour amongst players, employees? I'm sure everybody's just as ready, if not more so, for golf to be back than the general sports public. For
sure, and I think really a high level of excitement and anticipation because it's been 91 days at the start of the opening round on Thursday of this week since we last had live golf. The Players Championship was abbreviated and the season was temporarily shut down. We obviously didn't know then or in the immediate weeks after that when and if we were going to have live golf again. So the tour has a plan in place, and it's going to be a cautious plan. We'll put it that way. There's a lot of optimism, but things certainly will be very different without fans on site, and things certainly will go a lot more smoothly with the ownership and the buy-in of the players, Rich, with this exhaustive health and safety plan that's been put into place for the last few months. But they are all in, they're ready to go. And this field at Colonial, which is one of the great old courses in the game, is as good as they have ever had. The best players in the game are itching to go, man, and they're going to be there teeing up this week.
Well, we'll get more to the guys that are in the field here in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you a little about the PGA Tour Live broadcast this week that you're going to be a part of. Can you give me a little information, any new wrinkles in the works, or is it going to sort of be just business as usual and just, back hanging out with everybody at the high school reunion?
Well, I think we will try to take the same high-level production approach that we always have. There's so many good people that work on that broadcast, as you know, and me and my fellow announcers are just a small part of the team. But I think I would say sort of striking the right tone is important here this week. I think the production from our standpoint will look the same, or certainly our approach to it will. The environment's going to be a little different because there'll be no fans on site. I think the players, how they react to that remains to be seen. It's going to be a little strange for them. And I think we just really need to let the broadcast unfold and kind of keep it uncluttered and unintrusive and let the fans experience it in the way that they want to, because they're starved for some live professional sports and some live golf as well. But, it's an escape possibly for people. It's on a very small scale relative to what's happening right now in a very fractured world in which we live. Sports offers an escape, a little bit of a respite in the best of times. And these are not the best of times right now. So this is an opportunity for the game to really shine this week. And we're excited for that opportunity.
I saw Jim Nantz had some comments a couple of days ago about the pressure he felt to get the moment right this weekend on CBS and some of the new measures that they put in place. As an announcer, with the sports world maybe being a little more focused on golf this week, is there any additional pressure that you feel as a broadcaster to say the right thing or just to be spot on in everything that's going on, or are you just happy to be back on the air?
A little bit of both, I would say, Rich. I always get a little nervous before any broadcast, that I've been doing it for a long time, but I always get a little nervous, and I take that as a positive sign. You don't want anxiety, certainly, or any fear that you're not going to perform well. And I always think of a great old Jack Nicklaus quote: the difference between nerves and anxiety is preparation. And there's been a lot of preparation put forth by everybody involved in the broadcast here this week. You do your due diligence, and you have everything at arm's length for if and when you need to use it. And then you let things unfold, and you listen and you watch and you react to what you see and hear from the players, from your broadcast partners, all of it. And as I said, striking the right tone and finding the balance between the excitement we all feel from the return of golf and the sadness that we all feel from the broken society that we're living in now is going to be important to find. But we'll let the pictures and the sounds naturally and organically kind of tell the story. Hopefully that's the way it goes.
Getting into golf production a little bit more, we've seen some of these exhibition matches over the last couple of weeks, and we've had players mic'd, and it's been a little bit of a different approach for obvious reasons. But just curious what your take is, not just on those, but is there an attitude shifting maybe amongst players or broadcast partners for some of those changes and unique things to maybe return down the line and not just be a one-off?
Well, there might be, and I think this is an opportunity for the game to really broaden its fan base. There's a chance for some new and fresh innovations, maybe, if the players are into that. I think we all agree, as we watched the match a couple of weeks ago, and also the Skins game with Ricky Fowler and Dustin Johnson and Rory and Matthew Wolff, how fun that was to see guys back in their element again. Now, the competition, the landscape of it, of course, was a little bit different from a full field PGA Tour event where they're competing for prize money and FedEx Cup points and all of that. There's a different pressure involved with that. So I think guys will have to, maybe decide if, for instance, wearing a microphone during play is something that they would be comfortable with. There's lots of innovations out there that are available to enhance the broadcast from a PGA Tour Live perspective, or the fine production teams at Golf Channel and NBC and CBS that do their fabulous work from week to week. I think everything's on the table right now. And the tour and its players are certainly open to listening to any opportunities that are going to make the fan engagement experience just a little bit better than it even is right now.
From a fan's perspective, let's say that's something that takes off, players wearing mics at some point down the line. Who's a player that a lot of maybe casual sports fans don't know, that if they were mic'd up, they would really see their personality and they might really kind of explode in popularity a little bit, or people might realize, oh, okay, this guy's an interesting guy. Who's a golfer that maybe is a little off the radar that people would really enjoy hearing mic'd up?
Ooh, that's a good question. Any certain players don't come to mind right now. They're all very interesting guys, and we've gotten to know them in our realm of work, Richie, you and I, and those of us that are, even tangentially involved in the production and the tour from week to week. These are all they're interesting guys. They're funny guys. They're engaging. They're spirited guys. They'll get the needle out, and I think what you would hope to capture in an environment like that with live microphones is maybe sort of the give and take and the banter of, say, a Tuesday or Wednesday practice game out there. But during the competition, it's different, and I'm not fully convinced that everybody is going to be willing to do that. But this is the very early experimental stages of kind of what might be feasible. We'll put it that way. But any one of these guys, if given the opportunity to kind of showcase his personality, might surprise a few folks listening and watching.
You mentioned earlier that there'd be no fans out there this week, which is obviously a big change for the tour, not just from a television perspective, but also from a charitable perspective, because all these tournaments do so much for local communities, and local ticket sales are a big part of that. What do you foresee as the impact moving forward, or what's a way to sort of figure out a way to continue to make an impact in these communities without, selling tickets to fans and having a bunch of people on site each week?
Well, it's the lifeblood of the PGA Tour, right? Charitable giving. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, well north of $2 billion to help communities in which the tour visits from week to week. This has been going on for years and years. And even during the stand down without tournament play for the last 90 days, close to 40 million has been raised for COVID relief. And that's only going to continue. I think this week will sort of be the launch of what could be a very spirited and charitable stretch going with these initial tournaments upon the resumption of play. There's a platform in place this week. In fact, it's called Rise to the Challenge. And it was formed by partnership with the tour and the folks at Charles Schwab and the tournament as well. And it is going to not only generate a lot of money for Dallas-Fort Worth, the charities here this week, Rich, but also recognize and identify the frontline healthcare workers, the folks that have put their lives on the line, quite honestly, over the last 12 plus weeks at least. They're going to be recognized in small ways, like with their names on caddy bibs right next to the players, which I think is a pretty cool, nice little touch. And in more personal ways, a lot of the players have recorded messages, video tributes in appreciation for their efforts. We're all guilty sometimes of using words like courageous and brave and heroic in our sports lexicon. And certainly I've fallen into that trap more than a few times. But what these folks do is truly courageous and brave and heroic. And mere words can't thank them enough. But we do thank them sincerely and profoundly.
Well, it's wonderful what the tour does for all these communities all year round. And so it's good to see a little extra special something this week as the game returns. Once players get out on the course, I know we're not going to see fans when we watch on TV, but what else might look a little different? What other procedures are in place or rules as far as, player, social distancing during a round or things like that? What's sort of the game plan to try to keep people apart and within the new rules, so to speak?
Well, this plan has been in the works for a few months now, and pretty cautious and exhaustive health and safety measures have been put into place. And as I said earlier, the players are buying in. They have to in order for this to work. Testing has been very strictly adhered to this week and will be in these initial tournaments coming back. So the players all understand their role in taking ownership in how this needs to go in order to be a successful staging of a PGA Tour event. As for the infrastructure, I mean, there's going to be no grandstands out there, right? No hospitality tents. Just the normal look and feel of a golf course is going to be very different. No fans lining the fairways. And that could affect the competition, honestly. I mean, there's some errant tee shots that sometimes are kicked back into play by a fan, or get a friendly carom off a grandstand behind the green, that sort of thing. But, those are small things, certainly, and remains to be seen how that's going to play out. But I think the tour has taken all the necessary steps to promote a very safe and healthy environment for the players. And they've got an opportunity here to demonstrate, I think, Rich, how professional sports can continue in a socially distanced manner and in that type of environment going forward here starting this week.
Now, for you guys on the broadcast, I know you're producing remotely from your home base in Florida every week. And while you do have people out in the field, cameras and reporters and different things like that, what are the challenges for you guys this week from a distancing perspective with the boots on the ground and the people that are on site? Is there going to be any change to your normal workflow? Or because I know like during the match, they had to kind of reset the cameras between each holes because they had minimal people out there. Is that going to be an issue for you guys, or is it going to be a similar presence on site to what we've seen in the past?
It won't be what we normally have. We have significantly reduced our footprint of folks on the ground, as the tournament itself has, in terms of volunteers and family members and gallery members and production folks and all of that. So it's a largely reduced footprint, but certainly sufficient to produce the broadcast. And as far as those of us go back in St. Augustine at our studios, that building for weeks now has been set up in a socially distant way in which everyone can perform their job comfortably and safely. So we feel pretty confident we're going to be able to pull this off. It's a unique set of challenges, but I think everybody's up for it.
All right, getting into the meat now a little bit. Obviously, besides golf coming back this week, what are some other storylines that fans might want to keep an eye on at Colonial?
Well, the all-star field that I mentioned before, 17 of the top 20 players in the world are there, headlined by Rory McIlroy, the top dog right now, the number one player in the world, player of the year on the tour last season, FedEx Cup champ last season as well. All he's done is rip off 7 straight top fives every single appearance he's made this season. So is Rory going to just pick up where he left off? Chances are he will. He is that great of a player, and he's really, really got things humming right now. So McIlroy is going to be in a featured group with John Rahm and Brooks Koepka, Richie, 1, 2, 3 in the world. They also played together the week of the Players' Championship in that opening round as well. So we'll look for the return of the big stars, and we'll look to see who's in form. I mean, we just don't know, other than those 2 exhibition matches. We don't know how much practicing these guys have been able to do based on where they live and the availability of their course and practice facilities. I mean, we just don't know. How much have they ramped it up in the last couple of weeks to get ready? Maybe quite a bit. I suspect quite a bit, but still there's no substitute for real competition. So there's going to be some rust, certainly. But, these guys are professionals and they're used to coming back under different circumstances following long layoffs. So this will be another one here this week. But this is a absolutely stacked field, as good as we've seen outside of the majors and the Players' Championship.
Well, I'm excited to see that 1, 2, 3 group. That's going to be a lot of fun on PGA Tour Live this week. But maybe off the radar a little bit, is there another guy from a fantasy golf perspective that maybe has your eye, flying under the radar a little bit, but somebody that you think could be in the mix come Sunday?
Well, it's hard to imagine a guy by the name of Jordan Spieth being off the radar, but he hasn't won in a couple of years, and he's not always mentioned on the short list of guys that you expect to win from week to week. But his record here at Colonial is impeccable, Richie. A win, a couple of second-place finishes, toss in a couple additional top tens. Spieth could very much be a factor here this week. Justin Rose, for some reason, a former number one player in the world and the winner here at Colonial a couple of years ago, is not getting a whole lot of love. I mean, it's not from the odds makers anyway. I saw something in the neighborhood of 45 or 50 to 1, which is kind of crazy for a past champion.
Wow.
So those are 2 big names, if you will, who are sort of outside the radar. Not sure why, but they are. A couple of names a little further down the beaten path. Scotty Scheffler is a young player who was in the midst of a terrific rookie season. He was the Korn Ferry Tour Player of the Year last year, lives in the area, plays the golf course often and plays it really well. Kevin Kisner is another guy who actually has been playing quite a bit of golf over the last several weeks. He's a former champion at Colonial as well. Just a couple guys to watch that could emerge from this stellar field here this week.
Excellent. I will try to get my FanDuel lineup set accordingly. Just looking big picture for the rest of the season, obviously there's a tentative schedule in place and some events have been moved around, but provided things go as planned and things are good from a global pandemic standpoint, what can fans look forward to and expect over the next couple months on the PGA Tour?
A very congested schedule from this week right through Labor Day. I mean, there's not going to be a week without an event in the world of professional golf and on the PGA Tour. There's some big ones, and some of which have been rescheduled to unfamiliar spots on the schedule. We're going to see the Masters in November. We're going to see the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship much later in the year than we ordinarily do. The FedEx Cup playoffs will get pushed a little bit, and that will conclude on Labor Day, Monday, Labor Day, the end of the Tour Championship. So kind of a sprint to the finish here. And I should point out too, Richie, I don't know if we brought this up or not, the players exempt status will not expire at the end of this year. The PGA Tour
I saw that.
Yeah, it did the right thing several weeks ago and said, look, for a number of reasons, we're going to extend everybody's exempt status and their playing privileges out on the tour for another season. So, I mean, that's great. So that relieves a little bit of the pressure for these guys. And anyone who's not comfortable coming back and playing just yet can make that decision for himself and his family without any repercussions of losing his tour card. So that's a good thing. So aside from that, big events stacked on top of one another week after week. FedEx Cup on the line, 3 major championships yet to be contested. And if we're lucky and we're able to kind of see this thing through to the end, it's going to be pretty special.
You know, looking at some of those events, you know, obviously there's great players in the field every week, but due to scheduling and guys need to take weeks off here and there or prepare for specific tournaments, you know, there is a little bit of an ebb and flow of the guys that are, you know, playing each week. But with such a condensed schedule and guys being off for a while, do you foresee there being maybe some more loaded fields during these summer months than we've seen historically?
Absolutely. And I think this week is a perfect example of that. Rory McIlroy, who we mentioned earlier, has never played this tournament before. You know, for different reasons, guys just kind of lock into the foundation of what's a comfortable schedule for them every year. And they may deviate from it a little bit here and there and sprinkle in an event or two that they don't typically play. But by and large, these guys are creatures of habit. You know that. They play kind of the same events every year. And everything's changed now. Everything's changed. And there's such a thirst for competition. And there's so much on the line, as we just discussed, with all these big events between now and September, that guys are going to be teeing it up far more often, starting this week at the Schwab, next week in Hilton Head at the RBC Heritage, and the week after that at the Travelers Championship in Hartford. Absolutely. That's a trend I think we'll see going forward.
Well, before we let you go, I do want to talk a little bit of just sports in general for a few minutes.
You got it.
PGA Tour coming back, you know, NBA is on the verge of coming back. Major League Baseball seems to sort of be at a standstill a little bit. And while I know you're a big baseball fan, since you do root for the Mets, are you okay if there's no season? Will that just save you some heartache?
Oh, this conversation is over. It's been a nice chat. It was so pleasant up until this point, and you had to go there. Hey, listen, with our rotation, if this is in fact a 50-game season, and I really hope it's not, I think that's just way too condensed version of a Major League Baseball season. But in a short season with some short playoff series, with our rotation, I'm all in, even without Noah Syndergaard out for a year, or a half year as it turns out.
Well, full disclosure for those listening, I'm a Braves fan, so Swanee and I have butted heads over NL East rivalries for many years now. So any chance I can get a dig in on you, I'm going to do it.
I hope they get it together. I'm so ready for some baseball. I mean, the NBA season is going to resume. It seems like they have a plan in place. I could not care less because the Knicks are just a laughing stock and don't even have a plan in place going forward. But I'm really, really missing baseball. So I'm hoping the Players Union and the owners can come to some sort of consensus, but it is not looking very promising right now, honestly.
Between the Mets and the Knicks, I know it's been a tough few years for you, and I don't want to make you talk about the Knicks any more than you already have, just because I'm not mean of a friend.
Thank you.
But you're also a Miami Dolphins fan. You got to be feeling pretty good about the direction the Dolphins are going right now.
Now, that's a team with a plan, right? I mentioned the Knicks do not have a plan. The Dolphins do. And I think it is taking shape quite nicely and quite favorably. I mean, after an 0-7 start last year, a 5-4 finish, and then I think they did some really terrific work in the drafts. I'm sure they were tempted to move up from 5 inside the top 3 to get to it, but they had done their work and they were confident he was going to fall to them. And I think that's going to end up, in my opinion, maybe being the best quarterback in this draft when we look at this 3-5 years down the road. Not exactly an objective view, I'll admit, but I think that's the way it could shake out. But I love what Brian Flores, their coach, Chris Greer, the GM, the player personnel guys as well. I love what they're doing. They had a lot of money to spend, but they didn't spend it foolishly. They addressed some needs. And look, with number 12 in New England down in Tampa, the beast at the top of the AFC East is vulnerable for the first time in 20 years. 20 years.
It's wide open.
So we'll see how it all shakes out. But I'm excited about the prospects of the Dolphins. And I haven't said that in a few years.
Yeah, that's a new one. I think that might be only the second time I've heard you say that. And I think the first time Chad Pennington came to town. So it's been a minute.
That hurts a little bit.
Hey, listen, as a Panthers fan, we're going through some rebuilding. It's going to be a lean couple of years. So hopefully it's a little better for you guys than it's going to be for me.
Hope so too.
John Swantek, thank you so much for joining us this week. You can follow him on Twitter at John Swantek. PGA Tour Live, tell the people where they can go to watch, download the app, all those sorts of things.
PGA Tour Live starts 7:45 Eastern on Thursday. Same start time all 4 days, in fact, this week. Charles Schwab Challenge and NBC Sports Gold is the platform on which you can subscribe, download the app.
Wonderful. Well, hopefully everybody will check that out. I always enjoy your work, and I'm sure the American public feels the same way. So we're happy to have golf back and appreciate you joining us.
Richie, I almost always enjoy your work. It was great catching up to you. See you, man.
Very, very kind of you. Thanks, Juan. See you later.
See ya.